there's more and more people talking about, the 10K in 10 hours a month. It's like those people built a foundation. They built the funnel, they've got the audience, like whatever it is they're selling for however much, they've got people that they're aligned with. And there's a lot of work that went in behind the scenes, whether it was intentional or not. They've got some work that they've put in that allows them that. And you just have to assess of like, do I have the same assets and resources available to me? And if not, how do I grow those so that I can have that someday?
Welcome to the Bold Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Jen Kinal, and this is a space where bold moves meet inspired action. Join us as we dive into stories, strategies, and mindset of those who are building their dreams, creating impactful communities, and redefining success on their terms. Whether you're looking for practical business tips, a boost of inspiration, or a community that gets your vision, you are in the right place. Get ready to elevate your journey and embrace what it means to be a bold founder. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Bold Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Jen Kinal, and today we are tackling a topic that is crucial for every entrepreneur. That is understanding your numbers, growing your profits, and breaking free from the cycle of overwork and burnout. Joining me today is the amazing Staci, a mom of two, multi-passionate entrepreneur, investor, board member, podcast host, and philanthropist. Staci has worked with thousands of business owners, scaled and exited her own 7-figure business, and now dedicates her time to helping entrepreneurs transform the way they approach their business. What sets Staci apart is her belief of the 3 non-negotiables for every successful business, which is making money, creating heart-led impact, and having a great life because of your business, not in spite of it. Staci knows firsthand what it feels like to be overworked, underpaid, and stuck on the treadmill of burnout. But she knows the freedom that comes with taking control of your time and your money and breaking through the invisible barriers that are holding you back and building a business that supports the life you want. Today, Staci will share her insights on understanding your numbers, increasing your profit, and creating a business that gives back your freedom. So I'm really excited for this conversation, Staci. I'm so excited to dive in with you.
Oh, likewise, Jen.
Okay. So I have a ton of questions for you, but I just love what you stand for. And I think that people are afraid of their numbers. So I think that it's really good to talk about that and talk about it in terms of overworking yourself and burning yourself out and not using your numbers to your benefit. So I'm really excited for that conversation.
Yeah. So what I have to tell you is I went to business school and I'm an accountant. And when I first started my own business, I actually didn't look at my numbers. I thought it was, I don't know why, but I'm probably like every other business owner. I'm like, the money will come if I just do the right things, right? If I just work hard, if I, congratulate the team and do all the wonderful leadership things we're supposed to do and treat the customers really well. And I actually found the opposite. I was working nonstop and I felt like nobody was happy with me. I didn't have enough to give to my family. I didn't have enough to give to my team members, and I didn't have enough to give to my customers to reach the standard that I wanted. And it sort of felt like it almost had this negative emotion with it where I'm like, look, I just got to figure out the profitability and the math, and I'm just going to have to do it. And it that didn't feel good. But what happened on the other side of that, the freedom from it, is something that I talk about all the time now, because when you know what you're working with, you're like, okay, you can maybe figure out pricing, right? So what's in my package? Even with an accounting firm, it was okay, what are we going to include and what aren't we going to include? And how do we make this feel really good for the customer, but it feels good for us? We've got parameters. All of a sudden now my team knows within, what do they have to work with? What are they doing? I know that my bills are covered each month. I knew that I had my own bills covered each month, and I felt good about how much I was taking home for what I was putting in. And all of a sudden it was just now all of a sudden we have money to donate each month, because it wasn't oh, do we have enough in the bank account? Do we not? Do we need to work harder? There was just so much freedom on the other side of it. And the numbers start telling you more stories than just, can you take a paycheck? They start telling you where you are having some trouble in the business, and it leads you, it's kind of like a flag telling you like, hey, take a look over here. There's some troubles, or, there's a lot of opportunity in this area. But the biggest thing was just like the freedom that I felt afterwards. I was like, how did I not do this sooner? Like I literally, people think like, oh, I didn't go to school for it or whatever. It's not that. It's just we were never taught that the money is actually like a freeing piece. We're taught that money is hard, that money is trouble, that money, there's never enough. And instead of being able to realize that, there's so much abundance and so much available for everybody on the other side of getting rid of that belief.
I really love that because you're right. Like people don't look at that. It's a scary thing for people. They just don't like to look at their numbers. It exactly what you said. It will come and it'll just be as it is. Like you don't have to worry about it. Well, you really do because there's a lot of expenses that come in business, and unless you have those in check, the money's not going to come. It could
Yeah.
go just as easily. So, what do you recommend for entrepreneurs who are in that position that you were when they are like just trusting that it's going to come, but they know they should look at it, but they're not. So, where should they start?
Yeah. I think the very first piece is that all of our decisions are based on some form of bookkeeping, and bookkeeping doesn't have to be hard. It could be something that you're doing in a spreadsheet. It can be something that you're using like QuickBooks, for example, that will like hook right up to your bank account and it gives you all the transactions. You just have to code it. But really the first step to like getting past the stigma of like, or the head in the sand of I don't want to see this, is having some bookkeeping prepared so you can see like what is the pattern. So where, what am I spending on a monthly basis? And if you're going to tell me, okay, I don't want to do spreadsheets and I don't want to use this tech, even just being able to look at your bank statement, right? And add up, like, what am I spending on a monthly basis, and start getting some clarity and perspective on that. In accounting, we talk about your like break even number or what your burn rate is. Like there's lots of different terminology for this concept, but the idea is we really want to know what we're spending each month. That's kind of like happens no matter what, so that we have perspective. And I think personal budget wise, you kind of want to know that too, right? Even if you're on a salary, you're like, hey, what am I going to spend on my mortgage and the car and the insurance, and what do I have left to spend? So that number for a business is the very first number that I would start with. But I've given you a couple options, right? Some tech, some, you're probably going to pull out your phone and use the calculator. But either way, it's about understanding that concept of, what am I spending?
Yeah, and I think that can get away from you because there's so many apps like for me personally, I have a lot of subscriptions to like ChatGPT. I've got QuickBooks. I've got Canva. And they all come at different times, and so sometimes you don't actually realize how much you're spending on all the software even just to keep
Hmm.
your business going until you actually do sit down and look at those expenses. And sometimes you signed up for them and then they're still reoccurring payments and you're like, I'm not even using this. Why is this part of my numbers? So definitely from that aspect, it's really important to constantly be looking at where is the money going and is it something that you should be continuing to spend money on.
Yeah, I find like software subscriptions and subscriptions in general is just like one area that we always sign up with the best of intentions, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a community. Sometimes like I just signed up for this thing like 2 months ago that would tell me some like trending sounds. And I had this intention of like posting more than what my social team posts. And I'm just like, why did I sign up for that? So when you're actually going through that on a monthly basis, there's so much opportunity to kind of cut the waste. But
Hmm.
you know what I often talk to clients about is there's really like three pillars that we, or like three levers that we get to pull when it comes to like profitability of our business, and then those kind of tie into some opportunity. So the three levers that you can pull are: one, which is your overhead. So that's things like dues and subscriptions and insurance, and maybe where you operate. And those expenses, what I find is there's tend to be a lot of very little expenses, and then there's a couple like maybe rent or a salary for an admin team that are like very large and they take up the most of those expenses. So we also want to right size like our investment of how much time we're looking at those and being like, okay, where are we going to cut costs? Because you can cut, but like, 80/20 principle is you're going to have a couple quick wins, and then everything from there on is going to be like, you're putting in a lot of your time to save pennies, and we don't want to be doing that. Like, that's not a good trade-off for our energy. The other two pillars are our inputs to what we're selling. So that's either like the time that we're client facing, or we have a team that's client facing, or like what we're selling. So you have that ability sometimes to have some sway in there. That's like when operations need to be efficient, things like that. And then, marketing and revenue. But understanding like, okay, where am I going to invest some time getting to know my numbers? I think it's that monthly bookkeeping, which is quick wins on, what's my overhead and break even, that really feels empowering to us to know like, okay, this is where we're at. Then we can start diving into like, do we have the right amount of revenue? And if we do, are we operating efficiently with it?
Okay, I really love that because it does, when you look at here's what your operating costs are, here's what your like profitability is, and then looking at the revenue piece, it really does make you feel like your shoulders can relax a little bit, you can calm down a little bit and understand, okay, this is where I'm at, here's where my goals are, here's where like maybe you're not at a place where you want to be or you thought you were. So by reviewing it like that, it really helps you to reflect on your business and what you're offering and where your time is spent and
Yeah.
what's worth it and what's not and where you want to go.
The funny part though is that sometimes I think that our assumption is that it's not enough. Like I actually had a client just a month ago who was like, "Oh, I didn't even realize that they broke six figures. Had no idea." Like they're like, "It's not enough. It's not enough." And like that's what our assumption is, and it turns out it was more than enough, right? And so just having the visibility in general can just be so freeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you're in the mindset that it's not enough, I'm not there yet, that's a limiting belief, right? And if you've already hit it and you're not celebrating the fact that you hit that target for yourself, I mean, you're missing out on the opportunity to one, be like, well done, but also to really see where your business is at and where you could take it next. Because if you're not realizing you can go like up to the next level because you're still chasing that first level, how
Mhm.
like your business, you're almost at a loss because your business could have done so much more and you didn't even realize it was already doing it, right? Like you're limiting
Yeah.
yourself.
Well, and like what we know about business growth is that like you're the CEO of the business, right? So you really have to fill a role that is visionary, that's more of a leadership role. And so the problem, like in this specific instance, was that because it was like, oh, it's not enough, then they weren't actually hiring a team. They weren't
Mhm.
offloading anything. And so then it was capping how much the business could grow and ultimately capping how many people they could help, how many people they could how much money they can make,
Mhm.
and all those things. And so they're working to death because they're like, okay, I just have to do more, and like it's never enough. And all of a sudden, it's like, oh, it is, and the business could grow, and like there's just so much possibility on the other side of it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So what have you seen with business owners who have recognized that they're growing their profits and like how have you seen them shift once they've realized that yes, I've like let's say that person who hit the six-figure goal. How have you seen their business and their mindset kind of shift once they realize that they are doing better than they thought they were doing because they are so aware of their numbers?
Yeah, well, for the very first thing that we tend to have is people shift out of burnout because they're often to get to that place, like they're just at the, peak of high performance. They're like, how do we do more? How do we do it more efficiently? And so there's a time period where it actually like takes your nervous system to adapt to a little bit slower way of life. That is like a mindset shift too, because there's some level of like nervousness of like, okay, but if I let my foot off the gas, is this going to happen? So there's really like this new identity that has to be adopted, and a nervous system reset of like it's safe to not be working 24 hours a day. And I think that's one of the biggest things to start with to getting out of that loop is like they see the numbers and they're kind of tentative. So they've got to see them a couple times, and like start making changes in their own life. Usually we see somebody like attempting to take on, like a hobby or something. And like, It's always so funny because they're like, I just bought so much like crochet or like knitting stuff. And you're like, oh, okay, like probably you're going to give that up in a month. But like you need something, right? Like you think of like quitting
Yeah.
bad habits, you need something to fill the gap while you're getting used to the new normal. So that's always really fun. And then because we start systematizing things when we're like, oh, like it's safe now to be doing a little bit less. Once we've adopted that identity, we're more willing to bring on team. So we're seeing people invest in leadership skills because, I'm an accountant, but I would argue that leadership is like a whole skill that we don't really learn. Doesn't matter if we were like told we were a leader in school growing up or anything like that. Like leadership is really a skill set that we could all invest in. So we're seeing people invest in that so that they are running their team really well, and they're starting to put more systems in place so that things consistently go right when they're not paying attention as like heavily as what they were in the past. And then they start looking at like, okay, where does growth come next?
Oh, I love this so much. Like we're actually going, I've got my list of questions and we're like going through all of them even without me asking because it's such a flow of how business goes. Like when you start becoming aware of your numbers, you start to understand like your expenses and your profit. You can do some adjustments, but you're right. Once you start to realize that, okay, I'm actually doing well and I can maybe like, yeah, there is that up leveling of maybe I can take my foot off the gas pedal a little bit. I can enjoy life a little bit more. But also, like, this is your opportunity to learn so much more and expand your knowledge base in terms of the leadership, your team. There's so much opportunity that comes with just starting at knowing your numbers, which is crazy. Like it's so obvious, but yet it's something we skip.
Yeah, it's I think the problem is that without the concept of where we're at, so like the numbers kind of tell us like, okay, what are we spending? Like it's so vague to us that we tend to shortcut ourselves on expenses. We're like not investing in systems, we're not investing in help, and we're almost forcing work that doesn't maybe align with what the best practice of the business is. And there's so many things that we do in the name of money at that stage, whereas as soon as you kind of like admit to yourself like, okay, if I just look at these numbers, and then you do, it's like now it becomes more about business. Like what are we really good at, right? And who's going to be along for the ride to help me? It's like a whole different identity. At first you're kind of this slave to like making money, but you don't know if you're making money, and it's just like you're constantly going. And that other side of the coin is just like, yeah, it's just full of possibility. And I think it's a natural progression as a business owner too, because when you're first starting out, I don't suggest that people like, I like the idea of a business plan because I think you need to have some concept of, what is it going to cost you, and what's this business model, and like, what are we going to spend, and how are we going to make money? And that's great, but as soon as you get into it, it's like you forget about the business plan because nothing ever goes as planned. And especially at the start, right? Like you're learning so much about yourself. Even for me, like when I started business 2 or business 3, like you still literally have that learning curve where you're learning where you fit within the industry and what your niche is and what you value and things like that. So there's so much learning that goes on as like the business plan kind of went out the window, and we forget to pay attention to the numbers along that way. And we kind of have
Mm-hmm.
to, because we're like, you have to have your blinders on a little bit. It can't just be about the numbers. You have to be really listening to the customers early on to know like, what do they like? How am I serving them well? Like what, how do I align with them? Because without them, I don't have a business. So there's a little bit of a stage where I argue that it's like you kind of need your blinders on. You need to be not listening to, friends and family and all those things. And you need to be able to be like really tuned in and listening and kind of trusting your gut. But we forget to switch back to, oh yeah, like let's take a look at like, how did this work out?
Yeah. Okay, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna ask like what your tips are for when it comes to being in that middle stage, and you just basically like hit all of them right there again. Like the tips between starting your business, like it's hard to the starting your business and then like that part where you can finally realize that I'm at where I wanted to be, like that dream goal of yourself. There is a lot of hustle in that time, and putting your time, like you're the one who's doing a lot of the work. You haven't really hired a team yet. You're doing everything on your own. You are like it's all on you. All the stress is on you. And I think that's pretty amazing to think about how from there to like the end point where you're going is if we look at our numbers and we start really focusing in on our end goal and what we want to see in our business and how we can shift by focusing on the numbers, how can we make changes?
Yeah. So I think that the middle stage of business is a really tough stage because you're probably still doing the work. So you have client facing responsibilities, and because you grew the business, a lot of the clients still know you, right? They a lot of them want you if you're a service provider, even if you're I'm thinking of a client who's retail. It's like, she was the face behind the brand, and as they grow, it's like people still want her and her opinion, and that can be a really tough stage. Then in addition to that, it's like hiring takes time. So hiring team members takes time. Creating those, downloading that knowledge, right? Whether it's like creating a standard operating procedure, like that still takes more time, and it can be really hard. So I think the number one thing at that stage is adopting the like, this is a marathon, not a sprint mentality. Because if you don't have that and you're expecting things to happen too quickly, you quit, and then people kind of wobble back and forth. So they like take a couple steps back and then they want to go forward again. Whereas if you're like, okay, this is a marathon and I'm prepping for a marathon, what do I need to know? So making sure that you aren't hitting burnout, like you're probably hustling, but don't push yourself past the edge. Um, Physically and mentally, right? So are you taking care of your mental health? Are you, exercising, going for a walk? What does that look like? And then the second piece is always asking yourself, like, if I had a tip, it's asking yourself, do I need to do this? Because a lot of the times we're doing things that we did early on, but maybe aren't relevant anymore. We're doing things within the business that don't add value to customers. We're thinking we as the owner have to, like, oh, I got to create this SOP, instead of like literally a decade ago, I was like, sit down in front of Zoom, walk somebody through it, explain the process to them as you're delivering it, so you're not going to like have to repeat it 10 times. Like, I've been giving that advice for years. So it's like, how can you do that smarter? Do you actually have to write out, a physical written book of a manual telling people where to click and what to do next, or is there an easier way? And if you can kind of come in at it with that mentality, then that's like the first step. And then from a numbers perspective, we're looking at how do we take things on incrementally. And I'm a huge fan of like fractional services, but asking yourself, like, what is going to get a return on my investment, right? So if we're like, okay, well, we want growth, you have to start making strategic decisions of, could I handle that, next level of revenue? Like, okay, it's going to require X number of team members. Like, do I have time to properly onboard, train, and then oversee that many team members? And if not, then it's like, okay, maybe there's another piece that needs to get addressed first, right? Maybe it's more internal systems and processes that maybe we need to bring on a consultant in that area. How do we afford a consultant to do that? So looking at like, what kind of fractional service can we bring in, or how do you fit that within your schedule? But it's sort of a stair-stepped approach of like, okay, what kind of budget am I working with? Like, what profit pool do I have at the end of the month that I'm like, okay, I can invest in that next stage of growth? Is it within is it actual like revenue growth and more customers, or is it something internal that from a foundational perspective like needs to be firmed up before we move forward? And usually we're just like looking at revenue, we're like, let's hit that next stage. But I would argue, like, think about what that next stage, if you're like, that's what I want to do, think about what that next stage is going to look like. What would your day look like with anything added on, another customer, another team member, etc., and start thinking like, okay, is that the right thing, or do I have some work to do so that that goes well?
And so are these the steps that you take with your clients when you look at their numbers and you break down like what's going on in their business and their goals? Is that the steps that you do with them?
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so another piece behind that is like, sometimes I have a client coming to me and they're like, look, I have a really good hire, and like, this is a next level in our business, and I really need somebody with these technical skills. And it's like really fun to be able to play with, like, okay, this is a little bit out of our price range, right? This might mean, you as the owner taking a little bit of a pay cut. Like, what are our options here? How quickly do we have to grow to be able to afford this? And like, that is so freeing to them to be like, oh, okay, I need to pick up one more project, or I need one more client to like make sure that that's like comfy enough for me to have that. And like just that perspective is like, oh, okay, like that sounds good. And then they can go and set out to do that. Right?
Mhm.
Like they then, their marketing team can all of a sudden put an emphasis on bringing in another client, or whatever that looks like, depending on, the business and the goal. But understanding what the whole plan behind that is. Um,
Mhm.
I have a book that I always recommend. It's called Vivid Vision. And I really love it just because it teaches people the concept. Like it's a short read, but the whole concept behind it is that you're really thinking about like what are the steps that happen after whatever goal you set. And I think that's a thing that we haven't taken very seriously. Like we're told to set goals, we're told to make, smart goals, like they need to be actionable, they need to be relevant and timely and all these things. Except what we haven't been told is like to truly understand like what's the relevance of that. So
Yeah.
oftentimes I'm seeing people with revenue goals and we're like, well, like what does that actually mean? What does that mean for your business? And they have no idea. Like they're like seven figures. You're like, what does your business even look like at seven figures?
Yeah.
Um, so a lot of the times it's revenue goals. One of the goals that I had and I see from a lot of service providers really relates to like, I don't actually want to work so hard. I tell a story about, I had a few stories leading up to this, but there was one particular tax season that I was 4 months pregnant. My dad had cancer and he went for surgery and he ended up on life support. And I was working from this surgical ICU doing taxes like two provinces away because my business wasn't set up to have me gone for any period of time. And my goals very quickly became about like having team. I wanted to have enough team members that if one person was sick or one person was away, then the rest of the team would be able to fill in for that, and you almost like wouldn't notice, right? Like that's big businesses. I know we talk about like, oh, you're just a number to them. I didn't want to be so big that we lost the heart, but I wanted to be big enough that it wasn't devastating if we lost one person, right? Like
Yeah.
um so that was really important. And on the other side of that, you get to start looking at like, okay, well, what do my revenue numbers have to be, and like, where do we have to be profitability, and will we even fit in this building that we're in, and start like looking deeper into it. But usually I'm seeing people throw up revenue goals just because they have no idea what other goal to set. And then sometimes it's like, I'm working too much, I need people covering me.
Yeah. Okay, I really love this whole topic right here because I really love the idea of like, here's my goal. Let's make actionable strategy to make it like actual plans to make it happen. But I love how you're integrating the numbers end of it because like for somebody to hire someone on their team, I hear a lot of entrepreneurs who are like, I can't afford it. I don't even know how. Like, but their number one fear really is like cost. Like if I bring them on, that means I'm going to make less. And so that typically will hold them back. But I like how you looked at the numbers and said, okay, well, if we brought someone on, it would cost X amount. So why don't we bring on another client to make at least like me feel better about that expense? Like, so now if I bring on another client, that I'm not weighing down like that extra expense is no longer in my existing income that I'm making.
Yeah.
It's now like we've now covered it, right? So that makes me feel so much better just as an entrepreneur myself, and to be able to be like, okay, no problem. It's a no-brainer then.
Okay, but this gets to be so fun because sometimes we assume, like, oh, we want to bring on this other person who knows they know what I know, right? Like they're great at what they do, and it comes with this kind of price tag on it. Arguably, everything you spend your money on in your business should have a return on investment, right? They should be adding value, but you're like, okay, this person, comes with a $60,000 a year salary. So how am I going to start paying that? And it's like, why is that the assumption? A lot of times with service providers, like we're talking about, like, how do you bring somebody on fractionally? Okay, so somebody, maybe 10 hours a week. Maybe you're bringing on somebody freelance, right? So the hourly rate is higher. Like they're only giving you 10 hours a week. So you're not making the same, what we call margin. You're not making the same amount, but it's a stair step. It's not a forever plan. It's a for now plan. So it's like, look, I don't know if I can actually bring on 10 clients today to afford that $60,000 a year salary. I think I might need some time doing it, but who's going to do the work when I'm between 1 and 10? Right? You're like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't onboard 10 at once, but I could probably onboard two. Who's going to do that work? So you're able to maybe bring somebody in freelance. And then maybe
Yeah.
it's like, oh, we actually need somebody part time. Maybe that freelancer wants to move to part time. Maybe not. Maybe you find somebody. And as you continue to make those progressions, then it's like, okay, you know those stages at numbers as well, right? Of like, okay,
Yeah.
when can I afford that person at that rate? And then sometimes we're actually, because we're making some margin, that means like you're making more in revenue than what you pay out to have that work done. Sometimes we can actually I actually had a clinic owner recently move from somebody who is outsourced freelance for their admin to somebody part time, and she was like, "Whoa, like I actually have now like significantly more hours from an admin team." She was able to offload even more that she was kind of filling in the gaps on, and then she was able to see more clients, and it was like, oh, like there's so much opportunity when you know what the number is.
Yeah. And I love that you talked also like the baby steps of bringing in someone freelance, because I know for a fact that when you bring someone in and you bring the right person in, they complement your business so much that you are actually able to, yes, give them some of your workload so that you can focus on either like the things you want, like attaining more clients, maybe even taking some time away, like you said, or having that opportunity to not have to be in the office, or like whatever your dream goal is when you design your business, right? So I love the fact that you're talking about taking baby steps for that, because so many entrepreneurs are like, nope, it's good. I got to hire full time and this is the cost, and it's not feasible all the time.
Yeah, I think there's some other tips to making that work well as well. Like one, they have to be treated, even though they're freelance, they have to be treated like a part of your team. So I would build into their hours, like creating an SOP, things like that, where they're like acting like they're on your team and they're following your rules. It's not just like, oh, I hired this sub and or like a company um, like if you hire somebody to build a house for you, you're not there every day like, ooh, you poured that foundation wrong. Like that's not the type of relationship you're having with these people. Like you're having them like they're on your team, right? They're doing work for you. So that's really important. And then just like understanding like the parameters around like what are they going to do and how are they helping me grow? Like how are they providing a return on the investment? I think that that can be really important because I have a lot of conversations about like, oh, should I only ever hire freelancers or only ever hire subcontractors, and should I hire team members? And I think like I have literally two marketing agencies that we work with, and one prefers team and one prefers freelance. Like what I'll say is like things can be done any way you want them to be, right? But
Yeah.
it's about how you choose to interact with people that really makes a difference.
Yeah, I really love that because I just think it gives the entrepreneur the choice to build their business the way they want. And I'm such an advocate for building your business the way that works for your life, for your family, your desires, and for you to be able to get to where you want financially and with your family and everything at the end goals.
Jen, I think the conversation that's so important is like I'm hearing that and I think it's important because like guys, if you don't love what you're going to do, what you do, like you're going to quit. And
Hmm.
so there has to be something in it, right? Like I'm a very heart led. People always tell me like as soon as you start talking about numbers and stuff, they're like, "Oh, you can feel it."
Hmm.
And so I'm very passionate about what I do. I'm passionate about how I show up for my family as well. So like those are kind of non-negotiables for me, but they also have to be married with like how do we provide value to a client or a customer? Because sometimes we're like too focused in one direction, right? You feel these people who are like ready to lay it down, so, like give a kidney to a client, like whatever you need, I'll do it all for you, which is not a great solution. And then on the other side, sometimes we get resentful, and then we get to that point where we're like, well, I need to love what I do, and like I want a great life, and this is what I want to work for my work hours, and like then there's no focus on how is this a great energy exchange for everybody? Like, how does it just keep going in a circle where like I'm lit up by it, the customer's lit up by it, and we're all getting so much value from it that we just want it to go on forever.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like kind of bringing in both. And that's where people think like, oh, if I look at the numbers, like I'm not going to care about the customer anymore. And it's like, not at all. It's so kind to them to know exactly what they're going to get from you, when they're going to get it, how much you're including in their package. um, whether it's a facial or accounting work, right? They want to know, and the clarity is so kind. And then that relationship is so good. It also, when you know your numbers, it's like you get to show up in other ways. You get to do fun things where it's like, a podcast or an event or all these things to give back to people. So it's like you don't have to lose the heart just because you're bringing numbers into it.
Yeah. I think that it's really there. It's everything kind of goes all hand in hand. Like I think the numbers are really crucial, and I agree that when you know your numbers and you are comfortable in what your numbers are, you can actually feel a little bit better about where you're sitting in your business. But it is a lot of trial and error. Like I have definitely had customers who I have given everything, and then yes, been resentful when I feel taken for granted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you go back and you look, okay, well, if they're getting all this, their package needs to be adjusted. And so, I mean, yeah, you know all this and you learn it, but knowing the numbers behind it, like how many hours I'm putting towards this one package, and if you're not getting compensated what you're worth, then that discussion needs to happen. Because if we do get into that place where you are resentful, then you're not going to be delivering your best work, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be firm in your boundaries. And you're right, that does create not a great work environment for yourself, but also for your customer to experience. So being like going and looking at your numbers before you get to that point, or maybe you have to look at it afterwards, but looking at those numbers and really understanding them can help you to get to like understand where what you should be charging, what your worth is, what your packages look like, so that it can be adjusted with that one client. But then also going forward, these are your non-negotiables in your business. And as long as that boundary is set right up front when they hire you, it's kind of like a game changer for your business and for you personally, for your family, everything. It's all full circle.
I think it's funny because people assume that what a customer wants is actually for us to like give them everything and for nearly for free, but that's not at all what a customer wants. They just want really clear communication on what they're going to get, and they want that delivered. And we actually arguably don't have to over deliver. Like I love to. It's my standard practice where we over deliver, but you don't have to over deliver to the extent that you think you do. Like I think there's so much fear and like, oh, I got to do more, I got to do more. It's like it's actually not that, and that can be a really unhealthy practice because then people are wondering why that's not just standard, and you go to quit doing that because you're like it's burning me out and it's not good. But you don't have to sacrifice yourself for it, right? Like really, people just want clarity. They
Yeah.
just want what they're told, they're promised they're going to get.
Yeah, exactly. And I think when we go above and beyond, I think it's an amazing thing that you can do. Um, and understanding that this is something you're choosing to do. But I think you also have to have that boundary in place where you are aware when somebody is not appreciating it.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. What is another question for you is what do you like? What would you offer as an actionable step for the people that are listening to get control of their finances and their profits and get started so they don't fall into burnout
Yeah.
and overwhelm?
So, understanding your three profit levers. So, I talked about revenue, like what goes into you selling. So, whether it's like your product or your service, and then what your overhead is. So, understanding your levers and then being able to understand like how each decision that you make fits within those. I think is really important. The other thing that I talk to people often about is that there's sort of this like puzzle that has to be put together. You have to identify like, what are your offerings because they have to provide value to a customer in like a way that they feel good about. You have to consider your customer, who they are, what they want, and then also yourself. Understanding like what do you need to earn from this job or this work because you're gonna quit if you don't get paid well, right? Sometimes you hear business owners are like, oh man, I'd be making like better wage if I went and worked at McDonald's. And like that's not ever something you want to be in that stage in your business. And then understanding your overhead. And when you put those pieces together, oh, sorry. And then the last piece is like the time that you have to do it in. So when you put those five pieces together and you're like, okay, here's how much I'm spending, here's how much I need to make, this is what's valuable to the customers, this is kind of like what I'm selling, and here's the time I can do it in, you're like, oh, well, that doesn't work. I need to outsource this. But, well, in order to outsource this, now I got to bring in a couple more customers. And when you massage that picture to get it to work, that's where the freedom comes. It's like
Yeah.
understanding those five puzzle pieces and like having a clear of like, does that work? So I have a course that I made, and I'm just like super passionate about always giving things away for free. So it comes with like a video and it walks you through how to do this. But like literally you can see like, here's all my offerings, here's how many people I work with, here's how much time. So like, does doing all of these activities fit in the amount of time I have? And does it cost the amount that I want, like in order to pay myself and pay the bills? Does that fit? And like now all of a sudden when it doesn't, because it rarely does to start with, the very first time you drew the picture, something's wrong. And now you get to go back and reiterate. Like that's where the freedom comes from, right? So I think we're always at a stage of refinement. Like we're always like, okay, for this picture to be a little bit nicer, I'd love to do this in business. And then we're working on like, okay, well, what are the action steps to get there? And when you get there, then you're like, oh, I could improve the picture this way a little bit. So it's like this ongoing thing. But those five pieces are somewhat oversimplified. They're great for like a solopreneur or somebody who's just using some subs. Like that picture is simplified enough. For bigger businesses, obviously it gets more and more complicated. But that's what it breaks down to, is like the freedom is in figuring out how that puzzle fits together.
I love that you have a course for this because I do feel like so many entrepreneurs, and I was this person who would be like, I don't want to look at the numbers. The numbers, I'm a creative person. I love the creative, the like the building of things. The numbers, I was always like, no, thank you. Like not interested. So even you like saying that this is something you offer is so awesome because I never want somebody in business to feel like lost. It's like so lost that they don't even want to start. But
Yeah.
I will say that starting to like knowing your numbers and understanding your business and your profit and where your expenses are going, it has so much power because it does tell you like, yes, you can go after these big dreams and you can afford them, or like you can adjust your dreams to go with whatever profit is happening in your business, right? Like we're never stuck. Like our business never has to go exactly as we expected it to go because it's never going to. But if you know your numbers, you can really actually go back and look at where you're at and make adjustments as you go and as your dreams change, right? So I just love the fact that you've simplified it into something that people can like digest easily.
Yeah, if
They
you're good
can,
with it, we can give it away for free too in the course notes or in the show notes. We
yeah,
can
I would love that.
upload there. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people do avoid it. Like
Yeah.
they avoid it and it spins in their head. Like they don't even know what you're saying is like, oh yeah, huh, I'll get to that, right? And it gets tossed.
Well, and so for somebody who's not being walked through it, first of all, like you didn't even know where to start, right? You're like, okay, I've kind of
Mhm.
got all these ideas, but you didn't know that I'm telling you like these are the five key areas you have to make these pictures work. But even when you do, you're like, I don't know how to do that. So we put it together in a way where you can like literally visually see like, does this work within my time frame? Does this hit the budgets I need it to hit? And if not, you start going from there. Even just for a period of time, I don't know, like the algorithm on social media always shows us something different, right? But for me, it was constantly showing me people online who are like, you can make all this money and by only working this many hours a day. And so what I was seeing is like coaches telling people like, well, just make a revenue, a money map, or like project your revenue. Like you only need to sell like 10 courses at $10,000 and you're at $100,000 a year. But then like in the course, I'm like, how far are you from selling those 10 courses? Like, do you have any
Mm-hmm.
leads for that? Right. So like that's a part of the analysis of like, okay, that's fantastic that that person telling you that advice has that kind of network built up and they think they can sell it. But if you don't think you can, then let's go back to the picture so you don't feel like a failure at the end of the month when you haven't sold one of 10 courses, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you get to feel empowered of like, well, where do I feel like I could make a difference, and like what's my path then to where I want to go.
Yeah, and I love the idea of mapping it out. Like I like, here's my goal, let's work backwards, but I agree, you have to be realistic. Just because somebody said, this is what I did and you can do it too, your topic is probably not the same. You personally are not the same, so you're not you're not pulling in the same people as this person is. Like your knowledge base, there's so much that goes into those make 10K, like whatever that they're telling you, like the $10,000 courses. Like I just wish people would have more realistic expectations on that, because and it's not their fault. It is people who have told them something that is ridiculous and
Yeah.
not even accepted in today now.
So the funny thing is like from a psychology perspective, what we know is that like we actually always are looking for more ease, and we always think it's like the next thing, and like how can we put in less effort? So we want more ease for less effort. And so from a marketing perspective, like most of these people are really great marketers, or are literally like that's what they do, right? They're going to teach you how to sell. They're often not like, let's look at the back end of your business, because the back end people are more realistic. But
Mm-hmm.
the front end, they know that marketing tactics are like, I just have to sell you on a dream. I need to sell you on what you want. You want to do more for less. So like you want to make the money and you want to put little effort into it. I mean, I could sell that way too, but I can't deliver on that promise. So like I don't sell that way. But that's why it's attractive. So it's like cut yourself some slack. Like I've even bought some of those courses where I'm like, this person's guaranteeing me something. Like I am,
Oh,
I'm tapped. I got all the things to do. I don't want to do this. Like I want ease too. So like I think we all give into that message, but it's like, well, what's the reality? And I think there's more and more people talking about, the 10K and 10 hours a month. It's like those people built a foundation. They built the funnel, they've got the audience, like whatever it is they're selling for however much, they've got people that they're aligned with. And there's a lot of work that went in behind the scenes, whether it was intentional or not. They've got some work that they've put in that allows them that. And you just have to assess of like, do I have the same assets and resources available to me? And if not, how do I grow those so that I can have that someday?
yeah. Yeah, I think that's amazing. I think it's good to really reflect on what you're seeing, what you're being told, and then decide, okay, how does this relate for me? But then also, like, is this something that I want for my business?
Yeah. I think it's funny because like usually those like 10-hour a week work weeks like appeal, if I'm thinking of myself, like it appeals to me when I'm like overcommitted.
Yeah.
Because then I sold my first business, and I like retired for a year, and I fell into a depression. Like I'm very honest with that about it was depressing to not feel like I was like contributing to society the same way. Like I wasn't using my gifts. Like I still was doing things for my daughters and for their school and things like that, but it was not a pleasant time for me. So like usually if I'm giving into those messages, I'm like, hey, reflecting back of like, ooh, what does this really mean for me? Like why am I feeling this way? Instead of like hopping on buying something from them, I'm like, okay, like this is a sign I need to look at my life right now.
I really like that because I do think I've definitely been guilty of looking, okay, well, let's see how we can simplify business and make more passive income. Like, I really love passive income. I think it's
Hmm.
an amazing thing. Um, but you're right. Why are you craving more of that? Because usually when I crave more of that, it's when my life is like extra busy,
Yeah.
right? And you're looking forward, you're looking for simplification and to enjoy it a bit more.
Yeah. I mean, I think the reality is that there's no such thing as passive income. Either you've taken the steps to build something that's now kind of on autopilot, but that doesn't, to me, that's not passive. Like it took a lot of work up front.
Yeah.
It's just like you're on the flywheel effect. Or a lot of the times those things aren't as valuable to the customer. So like you're constantly in customer acquisition mode, because if it's just like if it's no effort for you, is it providing value for other people? So like that's a very hard fit to try to find, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I created this one thing and everybody wants it. Like I think that even I had somebody on my podcast a couple weeks ago who was talking about Etsy and how wonderful Etsy can be, but she's like, she makes millions from it, millions in profit. And I think that's phenomenal. But she's like, people are lying to themselves if they think that they put a digital thing up on Etsy and it just sells itself. Like it's not passive. You're still, making tweaks and things like that to it.
But you're also still constantly marketing it.
Hmm.
Like you can't just put it out there and people will find it. People do not just find your product. They find it because you talk about it and because
Yeah.
you are sharing like why they should have it or what how they can use it or different aspects of the product or like anything that they can. How can you use it in this location? How can it help your business? How can it do this? Like you're constantly changing the perspective on why this product is needed in someone's life.
Hmm.
So then your customer is then looking at it going, okay, I've heard enough times. I think she's right. I need to go and get this product. So yeah, it's passive in the sense that it's built and it's ready to purchase, but it is not passive in the sense that you have to constantly be drawing attention to it. It doesn't just sell itself anymore. Like that, those days are long gone.
Yeah. Yeah. The world's too noisy. There's too many options for that.
Yeah. Okay. I love how this conversation shifted so much. Like it was such good conversation. Is there anything you want to leave us with, like a message or piece of advice to the listeners?
I have like so many pieces, but really, if there was something that I would like really leave people with is that business can look however you want it to. There's so much possibility. But what's really important is that you take the steps to figure that out, right? So how do things work for you? And then you get the advice when you're not sure. Go talk to somebody who's been there before, built what you want to build, and start understanding like how do I tweak this business so it works for myself and my family.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. Okay, we talked about having like headphone issues. Now mine just cut out.
Okay, I heard the echo.
Well, it went to an emergency alert.
Oh no.
I know. So, but I really appreciate you coming on and this was such like incredible conversation and I loved every minute of it and I'm so excited for everybody get to experience you but also hear about like your experiences with your own business but also burnout and like overcoming it, knowing your numbers, what you've seen with your customers. I think it's so powerful and so helpful to our audience.
Oh, thank you so much, Jen. I love this conversation and appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Thank you. Oh, and then where can people find you? I should say that. I got all flustered now.
Oh yeah. Um, I'm on Instagram at Staci.Millard. It's SEACI.MILLARD. The same on LinkedIn and also Small Business School podcast.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much and have such a wonderful day. All right, this conversation was so incredible. It just was like so heart centered, which is always my favorite, but talking numbers, and I know numbers can be super scary for a lot of business owners. I was definitely one of them. But when you look at your numbers, you start to feel more confident in your business and you are able to start making more bold moves in directions that you want and asking yourself what you want. So, a couple takeaways that I want to talk about is don't be scared to know your numbers. Like, just pause and listen to Staci, go through her 5 pictures that you can go through, but really think about okay, where am I spending my money? What is my profit looking like? What is my offerings looking like? Where do I want to be? And really wrapping that all up in your entire business because if we can start to know our numbers and not be scared of it, we can design our business to be the way we want it to be, like to reflect the lives we want to live, the dreams you want to do, the travel, the everything you're wanting out of your business, we can really start looking at our numbers and seeing. So if you're wanting to have more time away to enjoy your family or to travel, how can you do that? And how does your numbers allow you to make space in your life and in your business to do that? Like what do you need to do for target dollars in terms to be able to afford hiring somebody? And maybe that doesn't mean that we need to hire somebody at like the full salary. Maybe we bring someone in at freelance. So that goes to my second key point, which is take baby steps when it comes to growing your business. Do not feel like you have to go big or go home. You can bring in somebody who's super valuable, who only works a couple hours, but those couple hours can give you a little bit more freedom to grow your business in a different way, to focus on something that you love, or just take a little bit of time off. But from my experience, when I've brought on somebody, it has allowed me to grow my business, but even give better service and better impact and feel more confident in even like what I'm offering. So that was a huge key takeaway for me that I actually wasn't expecting to come from this interview. There were so many things that came from this interview that I was not expecting, and I just loved it. And then another thing is really thinking about what are you offering currently and how are you feeling about them? And this is something that I've had to do multiple times in business where you think about, okay, this is my offer and it's perfect for when you're doing it, because like it is like when I started doing social media, I majorly undercharged myself. And because I did that, it was perfect at the time. But come a couple like months, years down the road, you're looking at that going, okay, this price point does not fit for the number of hours I'm putting in. I don't want to get resentful of my clients, or I don't want to feel burnt out by the number of work I'm doing for the amount of hours that I'm putting in. So really looking at the numbers when it comes to even just your offerings is really, really important, because we want to really always love what we're doing, but also be paid well for what we're doing and not undercharging ourselves, because we never want to get into burnout, overwhelm, exhaustion, and being resentful. So I really loved this conversation. I just feel like I'm probably missing some key points because there was so much covered that I was not fully expecting to go into. And I just cannot wait for you guys to listen to it, because knowing your numbers, as scary as it can be so freeing and allow you to make moves in your business, bold moves, fun moves that really can get you to where you're hoping to be and where your end goal is. So I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I cannot wait to see you in the next one. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Bold Entrepreneur podcast. I hope you're walking away with inspiration, fresh insights, and a few takeaways to fuel your journey. If this episode resonated with you, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other bold founders and entrepreneurs in your circle. And when you're ready to elevate your business, check out the Bold Founders Collective. From community support to strategic resources and personalized coaching, we are here to help you thrive. Remember, the bold moves you make today will shape the future you're dreaming of. So stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll dive into deeper stories of strategies and mindset shifts that all make the difference. Until next time, stay bold, keep dreaming, and keep moving towards what lights you up.